Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mason Arts at Home and our conversation with Third Coast Percussion. We're very excited to be here tonight with Grammy Award-winning ensemble Third Coast Percussion. They are participating in this talk as well as a host of other activities as part of their time as Mason Arts in Residence with us. Today we're going to have a conversation with Third Coast Percussion and discuss various arts entrepreneurship topics, including how the ensemble members balance playing key roles in the management of the organization in addition to being the key performers, art in the time of COVID-19, I know that's on the top of everyone's list, and diversity, equity, and inclusion in the arts. I want to remind you there will be time for questions, so feel free to put any questions in the comments sections on Facebook or YouTube, and we will get to those at the end. And now I believe Third Coast Percussion has a video to kick us off. Sean, would you be so kind as to introduce this for us?
I'd be happy to, Carolee. Thank you very much. So we recently collaborated with the amazing composer Danny Elfman, who many of you might know from the film world. He's scored hundreds of movies at this point, including very, very famous ones like Nightmare Before Christmas, Batman, Beetlejuice, the list goes on. And he wrote a 4-movement work for percussion, which we just went into the studio and recorded. Just about 2 weeks ago now. So here is a short clip of us rehearsing the piece in our studio, which is on the other side of this wall behind me.
That was absolutely stunning. So beautiful. We're so excited to have this opportunity to be with you tonight and to learn about Third Coast Percussion and also to build upon the work that we've done in our courses. Our arts management program at George Mason University, where we have a master's, an undergraduate minor, and an accelerated master's, focuses on experiential learning and programming. And this has been a wonderful introduction to Third Coast Production through our work in our courses, working with some programming issues and marketing. So thank you very much for everything that you've been able to do with us so far. We are very thrilled to be able to incorporate your residency into our core programming. So David, would you take a moment and just introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much, Carolee, and thanks for the kind words. And it's been our absolute pleasure to be artist in residence with GMU. It's been a lot of fun, and thanks to you and to everyone at GMU for being so creative and flexible in this strange and often unsettling time. My name is David Skidmore. I'm obviously a performer with Third Coast Percussion, and I'm also the executive director of the organization.
Excellent. Thank you. What is the mission of Third Coast Percussion?
Our mission is to inspire and educate through the creation of exciting and unexpected musical experiences. So we are a classically trained quartet of percussionists, and all that means is that we all studied percussion in middle school and in high school, and then we each got at least 1 and up to 3 degrees in higher education in percussion performance with a focus on classical music for percussion, which is a somewhat rare but really beautiful art form that we are very passionate about. And this group is an outgrowth of the music that we fell in love with while we were in our studies.
Excellent. We'll get to meet the other members of the ensemble in just a moment. As you mentioned, I know you met while you were studying at Northwestern University, but what was the catalyst, that moment of starting Third Coast Percussion?
There were a whole lot of little moments that led up to it, which were just amazing experiences playing music like this while we were studying with Michael Burrett, who at the time was the professor of percussion at Northwestern University. He now teaches at the Eastman School of Music. He's a phenomenal musician and very inspiring and very invested in the type of music that we play. So having those really high-level performance experiences with this type of music as students kind of gave us the bug, so to speak. And then it was when actually Rob and I were members of the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, which is the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's training orchestra, and there were chamber music opportunities that we started to form the group that became Third Coast Percussion. And, we started very grassroots, playing concerts anywhere we could play for free with whatever instruments that we owned at the time, and learning really just day by day through the real life experiences of running a group like this and performing in a group like this, all that needs to go into to such an organization to make it both artistically and administratively successful.
Excellent, excellent. Have you always had that entrepreneurial that entrepreneurial mindset? I'll get that word right by the end of the tonight. It seems that you all are you're all multi-talented, but did you always kind of think of starting your own group and being able to do everything on your own?
Yeah,
self-manage.
It started very organically. We were self-managed at the beginning because no one would manage us because no one knew who we were. And I think that we are very fortunate that the 4 of us who are the performing members of the ensemble have also been able to learn how to run the business of the organization, and not only to do these jobs that are necessary for the organization to achieve its artistic purpose, but to take a lot of pride in those roles and to continue to improve that skill set. But none of us have any formal training in anything that we do administratively. I think almost without exception. So I never had any arts leadership training or business training in a formal sense. But here we are. And I couldn't run any organization that wasn't Third Coast Percussion. I'm pretty convinced of that.
Okay. Well, you have been kind enough to provide us with a video that kind of gives us an inside look on how Third Coast Percussion got started.
Great.
TCP.
Can you say F?
A.
Q.
Third Coast Percussion started in 2005. The four of us in Third Coast Percussion met while studying at Northwestern University with an amazing percussionist and teacher named Michael Burrett. As part of his teaching, Mike had us play a bunch of percussion ensemble music, and so we fell in love with that music while we were still students. In 2005, we were wrapping up or starting to wrap our studies, and Rob and I played in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, which is the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's training orchestra. And through Civic, we had opportunities to play chamber music concerts and educational concerts in a chamber music setting. And it was out of those two things, Civic Orchestra and Northwestern University, that Third Coast Percussion was born.
Fun fact, the percussion quartet that David and I played in while we were members of the Civic Orchestra of Chicago also included two other Northwestern percussion students, Anthony Calabrese, who is now a performer and music educator based in upstate New York, and Jacob Nissly, who is now the principal percussionist of the San Francisco Symphony. Jake and Anthony moved on to do other things at the end of that year in Civic. That is when Peter Martin and longtime ensemble member Clay Condon joined the group.
We played our first few concerts pretty much anywhere that would have us. We got a couple venues that we were able to play in for free, like we didn't have to rent the hall. We quickly learned that when you're in a group like Third Coast, not only is it important to play great, but you also have to know how to run the business. We didn't do a good job of telling anyone we were playing concerts, so nobody showed up. And we showed up to play these concerts with repertoire that called for 4 or 5 octave marimbas, and so we spent hours and hours and hours setting up and breaking our backs to get the instruments in place, and then played a short concert for nobody. Through those experiences, we really started to kind of cut our teeth and learn how to make not only great music, but also a successful organization.
One of the first Third Coast Percussion concerts was attended by a friend, Ethelbert Williams. Ethelbert had a background in percussion as well, but was beginning a career, a very successful career in marketing. And he volunteered to help us out if we needed a hand marketing ourselves and just figuring out how to start presenting ourselves to the world. So Ethelbert led us through the process of getting our first press photos, getting our first press kit made, making our initial recordings, and first website. Soon after that, when Third Coast Percussion Incorporated, we needed to form our first board of directors, and Ethelbert was one of the 3 friends that we asked to become part of our first board. He's been on the board ever since. That first board also included Samir Mayekar and Reba Cafarelli. Reba has recently rejoined Third Coast Percussion's team as our managing director in 2019.
Our first couple of concerts that we were hired to do, we were hired primarily by friends, people who were slightly older than us, who had gotten their first percussion teaching jobs and had us in to give a master class and play a concert for the percussion students. By doing these first few concerts, we learned how to play together, and we took photographs together, and so we had press materials that we could share with other people who hire people to play concerts. And very, very slowly, as the years went by, we started to get a reputation for the concerts that we were putting on and for the teaching that we were doing. While Third Coast was growing at this point, the 4 of us all made some money in Third Coast Percussion, but we also had part-time jobs doing other things. So all of us taught, and gradually Third Coast got busier and busier. and our lives got more and more crazy as we were trying to fit everything in, until 2013, when our schedules got busy enough that we had to decide we had to either do less Third Coast Percussion and keep our other jobs, or quit all of our other jobs and do Third Coast Percussion full-time. And so we decided to do Third Coast Percussion full-time. We had just become the ensemble residents at the University of Notre Dame, which helped us make this transition. It gave us a little bit of a solid footing financially to quit all these other opportunities and career paths that we were on. And we quickly found that by focusing all of our energy on Third Coast, it really started to take off. All of a sudden, other opportunities started to come up, more performance opportunities, more opportunities to work with composers we had always admired, or guest artists that we had always wanted to work with. We recorded an album of Steve Reich's music in 2016, and that album won a Grammy in 2017, which was a major milestone for us. And I remember standing on that stage and looking at these three friends and thinking that it was pretty crazy that we had built this thing from nothing. When Third Coast became a full-time job in 2013, it was just the four of us doing all the performing, all the rehearsing, and all the administrative work. But pretty quickly, things were growing to the point where we needed to hire some staff. So we started small. We hired one person part-time, and that was Liz Pesnell. She was amazing and super overqualified for the job we hired her for. So we were able to, thankfully, expand her position to full-time. She stayed with us for 5 years. And then over the years, we've added more positions. So now we have 3 full-time non-performing staff members and the 4 full-time ensemble members. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
That is quite a journey since 2005. Now, we've had a chance to meet David. I would like to give Rob, Sean, and Peter a chance to introduce themselves to us.
Hey, everyone.
Rob?
I'm Rob. I am also one of the performers, of course, and I am the development director for Third Coast Percussion.
And hello,
Peter?
everyone. Thanks so much for having us on the program. My name is Peter Martin, and in addition, like Rob, to being a member of the performing ensemble, I'm also the finance director of the organization.
My name is Sean Connors. I am the technical director for the organization, and we'll talk about all of these roles in more detail, I'm sure, sometime tonight.
Yeah. Well, I have to thank you for your amazing website. You give us so much information to mine, and we have many, many students who have questions for you. So I'm going to jump right into those. David, how do the ensemble members balance playing key roles in the functioning of the organization, in addition to being key performers and therefore the product of the organization, especially during tours and busy seasons?
That is a very good question. And to be honest, it's something that I think we've gotten pretty good at, but we still have to work on every single year. We are very good as an organization at scheduling our time. And a decision that we made as soon as we became full-time was that anytime the ensemble is not on tour, we work regular, predictable hours, Monday through Friday. So it used to be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And having that block of time reserved for Third Coast Percussion means that we can schedule our time in the way that we need to get the rehearsing done that we need to get the office work and meetings done that we need to. But the question asked specifically also about being on tour, and that's actually really the big challenge, because then the schedule is chaotic and not always up to us, and it's an ongoing struggle or challenge But the thing that we recognize is that our willingness, the four of us, to take on these administrative responsibilities has meant that artistically, Third Coast Percussion can be exactly what the four of us want it to be. And so as we're facing these challenges on tour of sometimes late nights answering emails because we spent all day in tech rehearsal in the theater without our phones or laptops near us, or we have to have an ad hoc, administrative meeting in a van as we're driving through a blizzard in Montana or something like that. The thing that we can come back to is that the trade-off is that we have control of our artistic destiny.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, that glamorous tour life, right?
That's right.
Rob. Rob, if I could turn to you, how have your responsibilities changed since the founding of the organization in 2005?
Yeah, that's a great question because, we have these very clearly delineated administrative roles now, that we just talked about. But of course, when we started the organization, we decided we wanted to start a percussion quartet. We didn't say like, okay, here we go. I'll be development director. Peter, you be finance director. It was like, okay, what do we do? And certain things just happened by happenstance. Peter likes to tell the story that the reason he's the finance director is because he was the one who opened our first bank account when we needed to have a bank account. But I'll add that Peter has remained the finance director because he's good at it and he's done a good job at it. So, I think as we've sort of figured out what the types of work are that we need to do to run the organization, we've sort of been able to organize the obligations according to that and figure out like what needs to be done. And of course, each of us, as defined by these roles, have big tasks that we need to do and big areas of the organization we're responsible for. But there are a million smaller tasks that also need to be done. So all of us wears a lot of hats, even aside from the things that, immediately make sense with our title. And as we were sort of talking about in the video, starting about 5 years ago, we were in the very wonderful position to be able to add additional staff who are not performers. And that has really helped to reshape the organization a bit as well. All of us still have these administrative roles that we're still in charge of, but the assistance that we have from our amazing team, Reba and Rebecca and Colin, has, I think, changed the way it functions. And especially when we are on tour, it makes such a huge difference that there are 3 people back at home really still focused on keeping the organization running.
Okay. Peter, we know you balance the checkbook, but I wonder if we could go around the room and ask each of you, what is like your day-to-day business part of the job? If we could start with Peter and then we'll go to David.
Yeah, well, as you said, I am sort of the CPA of the organization, so I'm taking care of the books, managing our QB file from day to day. That's pretty. That's actually kind of like the simple thing I do as finance director. I would say like the things that I tend to spend the most time on is putting together sort of budgets for either full fiscal years or for individual projects, and just trying to corral all these different financial areas that we're working on as an ensemble, whether it be a specific commissioning project or a recording project, and how that fits into our overall fiscal year budget and how that's going to affect future fiscal year budgets, and just making sure I'm in top communication with everybody in the ensemble. So my day today, I spent quite a bit of time working on not only our books, but also updating some budgets for not only this year, but next fiscal year. And I had a long meeting with our treasurer, our board treasurer, about all of that stuff too.
David, what's a day for you? Day like for you?
So the primary aspect of my role is I think of it now as relationship management and big picture stuff for Third Coast Percussion. So I'm in contact every day with people from our record label or people from our board of directors or presenters who are interested in hiring us, the guest artists that we're working with, the composers that we're working with. Sometimes key funders. I work with Rob on that. So when it comes time to try to get someone excited about Third Coast Percussion, I often sort of step up and become a cheerleader, sort of. For years and years, my nitty-gritty day-to-day was all about booking. And now Reba Cafarelli, our managing director, is primarily responsible for that, but I am often on the phone with presenters as a representative of the artists, talking from the artist perspective about the work that we're doing and trying to get us hired. But like Pete did, I'll run through today. We all spent an hour on the phone talking about traveling in the era of COVID and what we're all comfortable with. And we just came back from our first trip in 8 months. And we talked about all the things that actually went really, really well and a couple things we want to do better next time. And then I talked for an hour to a composer we've worked with a lot who were asking to potentially go on tour with us. I talked for an hour with a potential collaborator for a project that we might put together in 3 to 4 years. I talked for an hour with Reba about booking. And then I talked for an hour with Rebecca, another of our employees, about a video initiative that we're doing to beef up our YouTube subscribers. So it's I actually spend a ton of time on the phone. That's the shortest answer.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a little tie-in here. We were at APAP last January, and your booking people were actually next to us, our arts management area, and we had a lovely conversation about you all. So I feel like we've kind of come full circle here. So
that's great.
Rob, yeah, a little serendipity there. Rob, if we could turn to you.
Yeah, so as the development director, I'm sort of responsible for all of our contributed income. So that's grant money that we get from foundations and government or agencies, and as well as our individual donor campaigns. So, and thankfully, one of our staff members, Rebecca, now plays a large role in all of this work as well. So she and I coordinate to make sure that we're applying for and writing really great applications for all of the grants that we're eligible for, that we're seeking out new grant sources out there and researching what's available, and building relationships with all of our individual donors who support the work that we do. And so those are the various things that I spend time on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. And Sean?
So as the technical director, I'm mainly dealing with things related to logistics and production. So putting on any show and everything that goes into that. And we're percussionists, so there's a lot of schlepping involved. So I have to write tech writers, stage plots, figure out how to get instruments if we're traveling, have the right instruments if we're doing things in our studios, all things related to logistics and that sort of thing. And I'll just add in, for everyone, as Rob said, there's specific tasks that are actually pretty big that we all pick up that aren't under our titles. For instance, Rob's an excellent writer. He writes all our program notes and liner notes for albums. Dave's really good at social media, and he kind of deals with all of that. Peter and I head up our educational efforts. And then our 3 staff members, Colin, Reba, and Rebecca, are constantly spinning plates and doing a whole bunch of things. So our titles mainly just make sure that one person is making sure someone does that area.
Right. So being performers and executives with the organization, are there ever any conflicts of interest? David?
That's interesting. I don't think so, because if anything, it's the opposite, because we don't have other people making decisions for us. So I guess I wouldn't call them conflicts. I would call them the sort of normal balance that all artists do of choosing projects that both excite and inspire them, but also fit within what's important for the larger organization to be healthy. So we have projects that we know are with established revered composers, for instance, like we commissioned Philip Glass to write us a piece. It's also very important to us to help steward the next generation of composers. So we have an amazing program called the Emerging Composers Partnership, where we're deliberately working with composers who don't consider themselves yet to be on the level of Philip Glass, because that's something that we can offer. And so the Emerging Composers Partnership might be the kind of thing, if we had an administrative team that wasn't the four of us, they might say, why are you guys spending so much time on that? Just play more Philip Glass or something like that. And because it's the four of us, I think it helps the mission stay first and foremost in all of our decision making.
Okay. Yeah, if I could just echo what Dave was saying, I think just the fact that we are administrators as well as artists in the ensemble, rather than a conflict of interest, it just allows us to have a more holistic sort of perspective on what we do as a total arts organization.
Yeah. We actually have an excellent audience question, and Peter, I'll stay with you for this. How do you balance the potential stress of the admin work with your creative visioning? Do you ever find yourself wearing your Do you ever find yourself wearing your administrative hat?
Yeah, I would say that once again I tend to, and I think this might be similar for the other members of the ensemble, but I actually tend to not think of the administrative component of my job as like the stress builder, but if anything, it allows me to focus on something else than the art in an instant. It just gives me another sort of job to do, so that I can, if I am in a potentially anxiety-driven, experience, maybe I'm working on a really hard part, or we're preparing for a concert or something, and it just allows my brain to be able to focus on something else for a time being, to maybe let that pressure valve release on the anxiety inducing area, and vice versa. Being an artist allows me to maybe just sort of clear my head from the nitty-gritty numbers that I'm dealing with sort of every day. So I think they complement each other well, and actually help in the anxiety rather than create more anxiety.
Yeah, Rob? I'll just add to that. I think the one of the things that helps a lot with that is scheduling time for each thing. I think it's very easy in some cases, and I think a lot of artists maybe find themselves in positions where they have a certain job that is their job, and then they're trying to make time for their art outside of that. And I think if you schedule time for both as reserved time dedicated to that thing, it helps. And I definitely find that helps me, that if I say, okay, for these 2 hours, I'm going to go practice, or for these 2 hours, I'm going to sit and compose, or whatever the time is. And likewise, I think we're all very good at scheduling time to address our admin stuff, because there's a sense of immediate and practical urgency. But I think scheduling time for the artistic stuff allows you then to accept that you're not supposed to be working on grant applications or budgets or tech writers during that time.
Okay. Sean, I'll turn to you. And speaking of admin stress, we had an event that happened in March with our COVID-19 pandemic. How are y'all doing? I'm sure that changed everything you had for your carefully planned year, right?
So actually, Peter's gesture, he went like this, and I couldn't say that better. It was terrifying and invigorating at the same time. I personally felt closer and more inspired by everyone on our team, the other 6 members, than I ever had, because we were forced to make a decision. Like, are we going to prioritize Third Coast Percussion in a safe way, but make sure that we're all, as a team, going to survive this? And we did, and we had some very frank, very hard conversations, and emotions were high, but everyone buckled down and worked really fast. For example, folks who aren't on this call right now, Reba, our managing director, immediately went into work transitioning from being worried about gigs being canceled to actively transitioning engagements to be able to happen virtually. Colin, our studio manager, essentially taught himself how to be a TV producer in the span of 48 hours. Our last in-person concert was here in the Chicagoland area on March 13th, and our first public-facing live stream, guys correct me if I'm wrong, was March 20th. Is that right? Which Colin taught himself open broadcast system OBS during that time. He figured out what software we needed, multiple cameras and multiple microphones to produce a virtual product that Third Coast could feel proud about. So it's been an amazing experience because we've reached folks that we wouldn't have been able to reach otherwise. Whenever we do a live stream, we have we get to see the statistics, and people are watching from Saudi Arabia and countries in South America, and some people are even up during the middle of the night watching our concerts and across an ocean, and it's incredible. And we hadn't had plans to even visit their country, and that's very inspiring. So we're focused on all the positives, but our mantra as a group is to make a plan but be flexible, and 2020 is testing us on that.
Does anyone want to add to that? Has Sean pretty much wrapped up your thoughts?
Oh, I'll just add one thing, which is I think, some of the videos that we've shown tonight have been things that we also, were starting to create right at the very beginning of the pandemic. And there was a moment, it's not like we immediately knew what to do and how to be successful in this environment. But I think we immediately thought of what are all the things that we still can do? Because most of the things that we usually do, we can't do. So what can we still do? Let's try as many of the things as we can. And then as time went on, it was clear, okay, the live stream concerts that we're doing are something that's really special, that's connecting with people, and that we're, due to a variety of circumstances, in a better position to do maybe than a lot of other folks. And so we put more energy and focus into that. Although we've still been making some of these other videos that have been helpful content or things we maybe had wanted to do anyhow and will continue to have value after the pandemic is over. It was helpful for us just to try a bunch of things and see what works, and then sort of lean more heavily into the things that seem the most important.
I would just add.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I add one more thing?
Go ahead.
Like Sean said, everyone in our whole team, we're so fortunate to have such incredible, just people who are willing to do this work and be flexible. And the four of us had to decide, along with Colin, our studio manager, that we were going to form a pod at the beginning of the pandemic, which has continued. The idea of that has continued to evolve as cases go up and down and all that sort of thing. But I would add, and I'm gonna basically steal some ideas from Pete because he's got great ideas. But from the beginning, for us, it was about trying to do something positive, because we recognized and we also foresaw that there's so much that is difficult about this, and people are understandably tried by this situation. And we just wanted to try to acknowledge that everyone's got a completely different situation, but in whatever way we could add something positive to people's lives, we just kind of knew that would be valuable from the beginning. And Peter, I was going to steal one of your other ideas. I just forgot what it is. What are your great ideas about all this?
No, everybody is sort of summing up everything, just really, really well. I think, what Sean was saying from the very beginning about, how we were able to sort of come together, as a group in a way that we, never had before, was a really positive sort of experience, out of this. And what Dave was talking about from the very beginning, us like, as an organization, thinking that the best thing that we could do to help out, especially in the early stages of the pandemic, was to bring as much positive messaging as possible. And actually, all of our first live stream podcasts were also to bring awareness to various relief efforts that were going on in the arts. So there's an Arts for Illinois relief organization that we were steering donations towards. To help relieve, artists in need. There was, we did a takeover actually of the mayor's Instagram account, if you can believe that, to help bring awareness to similar efforts, not only in the state of Illinois, but the city of Chicago, and help drum up support from the community for that, and other, again, various sort of relief efforts that were going on in our sort of community of musicians.
And I remember the other thing of Pete, the other idea of Pete's that I was going to share with everyone, which is that, again, recognizing that every organization has its own set of situations and challenges. One of the main reasons that we've been able to be productive and create something positive in this time is just because of our organizational structure. And it's really as simple in a way of creating an organization where people are on salary as opposed to being a gig-based organization, which again, that works for our organization. It wouldn't work for every organization, but there are just some organizations that choose to be sort of a pay-per-service gig, part of the gig economy. And it's certainly not just music. I mean, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, you can go down a whole, smattering of professions in the United States of America that are wholly part of the gig-based economy, and there is no safety net for people who suddenly are told that they can't do their job and therefore they can't make any money. So it has reinforced to us the importance of an organization where, if at all possible, even on some small level, you make it about being an employee of the organization rather than saying when you play a concert, you get paid. You might get bigger paychecks that way when you're playing gigs, but as soon as the gigs dry up, if you're an employee-based organization, then you can pivot and you can be creative and you can continue to do what you actually do, which isn't play gigs. It's create value and create art and be a contributing member of society.
I would just add really quickly that we owe a debt of gratitude to our executive board. As a non-for-profit, we have a amazing board of people who volunteer their time to help guide and steward our organization. And many, many years ago, they encouraged us to create reserves to help us through rainy days. And those were in place for us. And because of guidance and also us being a little, honestly, financially conservative about certain things, it's scary and it's hard, especially when a lot of our income comes from engagements that require us to be in person. But there was a little bit of a buffer so that the first reaction wasn't, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay our rent? It was, oh my gosh, how are we going to keep Third Coast going?
Yeah. We have a couple of questions from our students, and I'd like to segue a little bit here. We haven't really brought up your education initiatives, and I know you have Embark and several other things that you do as well. And one of the questions we have from a student is, how is the organization continuing the educational pillar of your organization during this pandemic? How have you had to change and adapt?
Yeah, I'll maybe jump in on that first, and then of course let the rest of my bandmates dive into this too. I mean, education is a really big part from the very beginning of our organization. Education has been, and community engagement has been, a really important part of our identity. And like everybody else, we were so used to having these sort of in-person experiences, and we have a variety of different sort of programs that we've developed, over the years. All of them, though, are based on the premise that the four of us are in a space with some other type of community or some type of audience or learning community. So like every other teacher in this country, we had to figure out ways to make our educational programs, like make them virtual. In some of them that are I hate to use the words like simple, but like a 45-minute educational presentation that we have one called Think Outside the Drum. That one was maybe a little bit easier to pivot in that we were just doing the same thing from our studio, just virtually online via whatever platform. But some of the other larger projects were more challenging. We have an ongoing relationship with the People's Music School of Chicago, which is an amazing tuition-free music school in the city of Chicago. And we've been doing now for the past couple of years compositional projects with them, where we work with the students to create completely student-generated pieces of music and perform them together as a capstone experience. And that was difficult to create, a virtual or online version of that project, where like us being in the same room and being able to respond to them was so ingrained into the program, leading up to that point. So Sean did a really great job. Oh, Sean, he's this way, I think, on my screen. Sean did a really great job of, kind of taking that program and modifying it, as every great teacher, has to do in so many different scenarios, modifying it to the situation that you're in. And it continues to be challenging, but it by no means means that we don't do education or community engagement work like everybody else. We've just had to modify how we approach it.
I'll just add really quickly that again, there's some great silver linings. Like Peter transformed a program that we were doing. It was supposed to be in person, and it was all about marrying the STEM subjects to arts education. And we had planned for a 12-week curriculum, and suddenly COVID. And Peter took the reins on that particular project, and we've now developed it into something that's purposefully online, which engages teachers from 4 different time zones, all zooming into a classroom and helping to enrich an after-school experience for students in Elkhart, Indiana. So it's tough and challenging, but sometimes through constriction, you find creative responses to hardships that actually are better than what you would if you had access to more resources.
Well, I encourage everyone to check out your website, because you have some really beautiful videos that show some of your educational outreach, of course, pre-COVID, but just some wonderful work that you're doing. Absolutely.
If you'd like to see our COVID video, you should see the video that we made with the People's Music School. It's up on YouTube. It's called Together We Thrive. They made it all in May during a very scary time. So you can type in Third Coast Percussion, Together We Thrive, and you'll find it on YouTube.
Excellent, excellent. Highly recommend that you do that. So you brought up the need for the arts community to come together to help us all get through this. And besides donations and attendance, what, in your opinion, is the best way to support smaller arts and music creators during this time? And Rob, if I can toss that to you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think helping people to promote and share their work, and like advocating for artists whose work you like and believe in. I think social media is great at amplifying a lot of things, but one of the things that I think it could be effectively used more for, that would bring a lot of joy into people's lives, is like sharing art and music that you love. And I think the other thing is, in the internet age, I think it's very easy to get access to all sorts of art and music and all sorts of things without paying for it. And I think it's more important than ever to make a deliberate effort to pay creators for the work that they're doing. If you sort of have a choice between just streaming and listening to something for free and listening to a couple of ads, or paying to download the album, if it's an artist that you really like, go ahead and pay for the album, especially if during this time, I think, a lot of folks are really struggling. Some folks are still doing okay financially. So if you find yourself in a position where you're still doing all right, take this time to use the position you're in to help support the artists who are doing the work that you love. There are also ways to create like recurring donations to artists. Patreon is a site that, you subscribe to an artist rather than just paying for their particular work. And that way you're sort of continuing to support them over time.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, of course, we have another pandemic in the United States right now, and that's anti-racism. And I know this is something very important to you, and you've been working on this for many years, actually. So, David, if I could I ask you to talk about your efforts in this area?
Sure. So our efforts in this area came about very organically. And it came from a realization of our blind spots just because of how we came up, how we studied, and a history of implicit and explicit exclusion of people of color in the classical music world, and of non-male composers in the world of music composition. So it really started as just kind of conversations around everyday artistic planning meetings. We would have a meeting, we'd say, okay, here's a composer we're interested, here's a composer we're interested in, and we'd kind of look at the list of names, we'd say, okay, this is a list of white men. Why is every composer that we're discussing right now a white man? There are other composers out there who are not white men. And what that naive and organic conversation developed into was the proactive measures that we're taking now as an organization. So that includes a standing committee on our board for diversity, equity, and inclusion, a commitment to infusing diversity, equity, and inclusion work into every aspect of our organization. And the first sort of codified, measurable goal that we have in this area is in our programming. And the discussions around what our diversity goals were in programming started well before the pandemic. And those efforts became the importance of those efforts were brought into sharp relief by the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and so many others. And so we got serious and we codified our goals, which are now to have our programming, the composers whose work we perform, represent the nation that we live in.
Okay, and we have a video of your statement that we'll share. We have some questions from our students that would like to ask some questions on this topic. Sean, if I could ask you, on your website, you are very transparent about the efforts Third Coast Percussion is taking to diversify the organization. As you make these changes, especially when it comes to music selection, have you seen a noticeable impact or change in the audiences that you are reaching?
That's interesting because Well, we've always noticed with every change that we make in the organization, palpable results happen a few seasons afterwards, actually. And we haven't interacted with a live audience since we've put out this statement. However, I will say that when we are collaborating with artists who are not all white men, I have personally and only anecdotally noticed that there are more non-white men in the audience who take interest in the project, and so I firmly believe there's a correlation.
Okay. Rob, a question from a student. What percentage of your programming are commissions, and do you find commissions to be the best way to achieve your goals concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, I don't have an exact percentage, but I would say a very large percentage of our repertoire are commissions. Percussion ensembles are a relatively young art form within the classical music tradition. And so, we do have some pieces that are sort of standards in our world, but since the very beginning of our group, we started commissioning work. And I would say definitely like the thought that we put into commissions and who we commission, keeping an eye on that definitely plays an important role in helping us to meet our goals in terms, which we're measuring in terms of the percentage of time we're spending on stage playing music by different composers. And so one of the other things that's really important in all of that is that we ordinarily, but even during COVID, like we tour in a way that we perform the same program multiple times. Usually, I mean, occasionally we commission a piece or we learn a piece for a specific project that we play one time or two times, but we try as much as possible to play a piece a bunch of times. And part of our efforts towards this diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just to commission composers of color and non-male composers and then play their piece, but to make it part of our standard repertoire that we're touring and that we're playing a lot. And so it definitely plays a role in helping to shape that.
I just wanted to add quickly that speaking of commissions, we should give a shout out to Mason Center for the Arts, who helped us commission a new work by Tyonde Braxton that we premiered just a few weeks ago. So thank you. And there's no way to overstate the importance of organizations like GMU's Center for the Arts supporting new work, especially now when things in the art world are so tenuous.
Excellent. We have a few more questions from our audience tonight. Here's a fun one for each of you. I'll start with you, Peter. What's the favorite place or location that you have toured to with Third Coast Percussion, and why was it special to you?
Gosh, there's been so many places. I have a little bit of tunnel vision right now just because we just came from basically like the first traveling gig that we ever did, or not that we ever did, that we've done since March. We've never done a single show. Crazy how we got this far. No, but we had our first traveling performance since mid-March. Just last week, we went out to La Jolla, and I think for all of us, that was like a very special. It was a very special experience. I had a very emotional experience. I remember when we were on the stage, and we were sharing the stage actually with two dancers, and to not only like actually hear our sound in an actual bona fide concert hall, but then to also be sharing the stage with other artists was like a very, very overwhelming, experience. And I think that was very meaningful. So there's been so many amazing concerts that we've done, but like when we're talking about 2020 and the situation that we are in right now, I think all of us would agree that last week was very, very special. I also got to go see the ocean, which is very important to me, and I haven't seen it in a long time. And to wade in the Pacific Ocean was very meaningful. No offense to the Atlantic Ocean by you all, but that was very meaningful.
David, what's your favorite location?
Well, just before the shutdown, we went to Hong Kong. It was the first time the group's been there, the first time I've been there personally. And we were there actually in January, sort of just after some of the largest protests that were happening, that are of course still ongoing, and just before COVID-19 hit. So we really just fortuitously were able to go at all. But that was one of the last, maybe the last international gig that we've done since the shutdown, and I had an opportunity to just walk around and experience that incredible place. So that one's foremost on my mind right now.
Rob?
A couple of years ago, Sean, I hope I'm not stealing yours. A couple of years ago, we went to Juneau, Alaska for, that was yours. Tell you what, I'll switch to a different one then. I'll say another great place. Sean will talk about Juneau, but another great place that we've gone is Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is a beautiful performing arts center, Walton Arts Center, and it's a lovely town. And I think one of the things that is great generally about touring as an ensemble is that we find really interesting places and thriving artistic scenes in all parts of the country. And it's sort of, our name, Third Coast Percussion, is sort of an homage to the fact that like culture in America does not just exist on the two coasts, but that there's a lot of us in between. And I think getting to visit like places that people don't necessarily think of as artistic or cultural hubs, you still find some real gems.
And I'll add in that I can't talk about Juneau or Bogota, Colombia, or Lithuania, or California, or any of the amazing places. But for me, it's the people that we get to meet, and then the maintained relationships that come about from that. Always totally surprise me and get me excited to keep exploring and going new places and returning to old places. We have there's one large community music piece that we sometimes put together and curate as a Nuxawit by John Luther Adams. And there was one performance where all future and former Third Coast Percussion staff members took part in it in some way or whatever, and there's a picture of everyone in the organization before they even knew they were going to be staff members. And we met Rebecca McDaniel, for example, who's on our staff now, in South Carolina, and then we saw her again in Missouri, and these connections they keep getting closer and more tightly knit and more supportive every year, and it's encouraging to keep going with it because it's invigorating for us.
Excellent. Well, perhaps the most important question from the students tonight: what is your go-to recommendation for anyone interested in going into a music career or starting their own arts-based company? And David, if we could start with you.
Sure. I'll say two things. One is that a career in the arts is just like any other aspect of your life. Setting goals is important. It's like dieting or exercising or like doing your homework or whatever. If you set long-term goals that feel like they're out of reach, but you then set short-term goals that can actually lead you on that path, you hold yourself to them. Even if you don't get to what your exact long-term goal was, you get to a place that's great, that's in the direction of where you want your life to be. So that's, I think, the importance of that can't be overstated. And then the other thing that we say all the time is that asking for advice from people who are doing the types of work that you want to do is truly invaluable. And people, even if they don't have time at that moment when you ask them, everyone is flattered by being asked for advice and general happy to give it if you catch them at the right time. It's something we've done since we started the group and we still continue to do this day.
Great. I'll jump in next. Two little nuggets that I like to say. One is kind of whatever the thing is that you're most interested in doing as an artist, start doing it immediately. Even if you're not quite sure how to do it, you don't think you're good at it yet, whatever, or you have other obligations that are not exactly your dream job or creation or whatever, start working on it now and, don't wait. And the other one is, there's lots of great art to see, be well-rounded, and just soak in a lot of things outside of your field also. So if you're a musician, make time to go see a dance show, go see some theater, read an interesting book, do all these things. I think there's a pull to always, go see more concerts. You learn a ton from that, but I always get so inspired when I go see other shows. And I think, especially during COVID, there's so much stuff available online, and I think it's really important to pick something you want to see and put it on your calendar to see it, even if it's something that's just available to watch whenever. If you put it on your calendar, first off, you'll have something to look forward to and something that actually is on your schedule, which is great. But also you'll pay attention and really check out something cool and interesting.
What I would say is probably actually for anybody in any career, even outside of the arts or music, but I would say be creative and bring a creative perspective to any task that you're doing. And I often say that you can be one of two things in this world, and this is probably too general, but I'm just going to say it anyway. You can either be a problem finder or you can be a solution finder, and find creative solutions, and you will find a pathway beyond any challenges that you'll face. So be creative.
We don't like working with people who aren't kind. Be kind. Be a supportive person. There's plenty of room at the top. There's no room at the bottom for someone who's talented and a jerk. Mm-hmm. and also we have this mantra, which I think is truly our mantra of making a plan, but then being flexible. So tell people what you want. Tell people what you're trying to do. Put good energy out into the world. Let people know. You never know who's going to listen and help you along the way. But don't be afraid to adjust your plans and be open to new experiences.
Excellent, excellent. And Sean, I believe you may be looking for some interns in the future?
Oh, yes. So it's a very strange time right now, of course. But we always are open to the possibility of having interns at Third Coast Percussion. We've had one virtual intern since the beginning of the pandemic. And if you are interested, please reach out to us. You can talk directly to me. And my email address is my first name, SEAN, at thirdcoastpercussion.com. And I'd be happy to tell you more details about it. It's an unpaid internship, but you get a behind the scene look into what it's like to run a small arts organization.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that information. I would be taking advantage of that. My students, are you hearing this? All right. Well, I have a feeling we could be talking for all night. You have such great information to share with us. And once again, I do encourage everyone to check out your website because we've just barely scratched the surface of some of the work that you're doing. So thank you, Third Coast Percussion. This has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you again for working with our arts management program and Mason Arts at Home. We've really enjoyed this time with you and all the different work you've done at George Mason. And I know you have one more event coming up. So our next event at Mason Arts at Home is on Sunday, November 15th at 5 p.m. And that features a live stream talk with Lil Buck, John Buggs, and David Skidmore about their creative collaborations across dance and music. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.